This happened back in 2019 to 2021 and it still sticks with me today. I'll be using fake names for myself and the man that I'm talking about. Mary for me and Dennis for him. When I was 13, I met someone in Discord. He was funny, smart, and exactly my type. He was also 16. I don't know my logic with that being okay at 13, but I was stupid and naive. And we became close friends. After about 3 months of knowing him, I told him that I had feelings for him. We then ended up dating. We lived across the country from each other and we were basically just friends, but whatever. So, as we're dating, he starts basically grooming me. As a kid who was always in the internet and was exposed to Kick also, I was used to this behavior and thought that it was fine. He had me send inappropriate photos, gross messages, and pretty much worship him. I wasn't allowed to talk to people on Discord without him there and stuff like that. He told me that he would kill himself if I ever left or how he was always on drugs because he was so sad. He was also really racist and thought that weird jokes were okay. I'm so mad at myself for not realizing that it wasn't okay back then. So he ends up cheating on me with his ex and tossed me out the door. He doesn't talk to me anymore and says that we shouldn't talk anymore because we aren't together. Here's where it gets bad. Note, this happened over 5 years ago and I have a spotty memory of this time. New accounts pop up in the server that we met on. It was a server of a bunch of mutual friends, and they started saying horrible things about me. Oh, Mary's a fat whale, and more things like that. The accounts have names like Jerry does bad stuff or Big Fat Whale, etc. I had gotten in trouble with the server owners because it was my fault that people were saying these things. Like I had told them to go spam things about me or something. The accounts also start messaging me to do bad things to myself, and just overall really negative things. I ended up blocking every account and moving on with my life. Great, it was over with. Or so I thought it was. Fast forward a year to late summer of 2019 and everything starts up again. The messages, him telling people lies and rumors and direct threats. I was sent a lot of bad things again and that I should do bad things to myself because nobody cares about me. At that time, I had undiagnosed depression and anxiety almost did make me end myself. I went to therapy and tried to get over it. In 2020, right when the quarantine happened, I got a boyfriend. I was super happy and I finally came out of my shell. He and I would play games together on Discord and I joined more servers. Around 2 months later, I got another message. Somebody had messaged me named Lily, I believe. It was a normal profile and we were in a server together, so I thought nothing of it. She then had messaged me how I was and how I never talked to her before, so I was confused. She said we had a long conversation about mental health the day before, so she wanted to make sure that I was alright. I asked who she was and what she was talking about, and she said something like, "Oh, you told me about this. You said that you take meds for schizophrenia and you must have missed a dose. Are you off your meds?" I was extremely confused and scared because I had never talked to this person, and certainly I didn't have schizophrenia. After about 10 minutes of the charade, I realized that it was Dennis. I blocked the account and didn't accept any new friend requests. The next day, I got hundreds of messages with the same content that I previously mentioned. A lot of threats, and I was terrified. So I asked my current boyfriend for help, and he told me to make a new account and to not friend any of the other mutual friends so he couldn't find me. I did, which cost an affiliated Twitch account that I had spent years building. I changed all my accounts, deleted most, and made new ones. But the messages found me again. I have no idea how these new accounts weren't tied to me. I got fed up and I had asked a mutual friend I thought that I could trust some personal information about Dennis to go to the police and get a possible restraining order or something. I didn't totally know how the police handled these issues. Months go by and nothing, until the fall of 2021, in which Dennis messages me again, a lot with the same stuff and how he always will find me. How I'm so dumb and that nobody loves me. So I isolated myself and deleted more accounts. I never was able to go to the police because I had no information like his full name or his address. It's been 2 years and every day I worry if he lives near me, if he knows where I live or go to school. I recently found out that he has a website and made YouTube videos. He has made YouTube videos referencing me in 2022. His copyright claim is something like Mary the Whale Incorporated, but I can't find it anymore, so I put the closest to what I remembered. It was horrible and I'm still worried every day that he will find me. I believe that he has a Reddit account and he could possibly find this. I hope we don't meet again, Dennis, and I wish you the worst. I work overnights at a 24-hour diner. You can probably guess what the company is. I'm used to weird people and odd things happening, but tonight was too much. The restaurant backs up to a field that has a tree line, and my cook and I went out back for a smoke. We could hear somebody yelling off in the distance, but we get a lot of homeless people that come through town that usually are harmless, so we shrugged it off as weird and we went back inside. Later, I came out again to smoke and throw away some trash in the dumpster that is next to the field. It was stupid to go over to it, but I hadn't heard him again. As I'm walking away from the dumpster, I hear, "Hey you, come here, hey, come over here." It was much closer than when we had heard him yelling the first time. I went inside and got my coworker who owns a car with a spotlight on it. We shined it out into the field, which again was not smart and we admit that, but we couldn't see where he was. But he kept saying, "Hey girl, come here." I called the cops by this point because it was just getting too weird. As soon as I get off the phone with them, he comes walking up out of the field. He was an older man wearing a tan trench coat, and my coworker and a customer with us ran back inside because this dude was straight up hauling butt across the parking lot. He started to come towards the door and I called the cops again. The cook cut him off and told him that he needed to go. The man was acting irrationally, yelling at my cook and said, "I'll end your life next time I see you." He kept moving his jacket by his waist like he was flashing a weapon, but I couldn't see anything from inside. The cops eventually show up and get him down the road, and an officer came by and basically said the guy is homeless and not mentally stable. Yeah, no kidding. We told them everything that happened and my cook pressed charges on him. The officer told us that there wasn't anything they could do, and he wouldn't give her his name, so they let him go. Basically, it ended with, "Oh, by the way, he's known to carry a knife in his waistband. Call us if you ever need us. See ya." So, he came back again, hauling butt across the neighboring parking lot and back into the field. We could hear him screaming and yelling, "Hey, come over here," again and again. We got busy when the bars closed and we hadn't heard him yelling since, but I know that he's still back there because I had caught him sleeping back behind the dumpster before. My manager comes in the morning and I'm going to try to get her to let me take a picture of him off the security tapes so that I can warn the other third shift workers. The field that he's camping out in also backs up to a middle school, but the cops said again that there was nothing that they could do. Hopefully he just moves on and leaves us alone, or the cops can get him on something where nobody gets hurt. It's been about 10 years since this happened, but I still remember things pretty clearly. I should note that this is told from my perspective, and I wish that I could get my mother's perspective on it as well. She just doesn't remember the events as well as I do. For context, I lived in a mid-sized city in the southern United States, where the main thing to do at the time was go to the mall. Sure, we had movie theaters and a couple of bowling alleys, but besides that, there really wasn't much to do in the city. My mom worked at a department store located in the mall, and having nothing better to do, I would often go and sit in the break room while she worked. It gave me a reason to get out of the house, and if I wanted to, I was allowed to walk around the mall or get something to snack on in the food court. Honestly though, I was shy and preferred to just stay cooped up in the break room, playing video games on my Nintendo 3DS. My mom's coworkers were generally very sweet to me, and frequently popped in to say hello, or just to check on me during the downtime. If I was lucky enough to go with my mom on weekends, I could usually convince my mom to pick up my friend. We were actually dating, but since we were both girls, I didn't want her to get out, to come along with us. Going to the mall meant that I was free from doing chores at home, and it was a cheap way to sneak a secret date in every now and then. My girlfriend, though, never really liked staying in the break room with me. She always wanted to go walk around the mall. I should note that she really enjoyed taking walks, so it wasn't out of the ordinary to want to do so at the mall as well. I just didn't like walking as much as she did, so I tried to weasel my way out of it whenever I could. I could usually convince her to just walk over to a nearby store and look around, or to go grab something from the food court rather than walking. But I noticed pretty quickly that she wasn't trying to actually get me to walk around. She just didn't want to be in the break room. Now, my girlfriend was more perceptive to things than I was, and I assumed she just didn't like the ambience of the break room for some reason. For a little while, I let it go, but eventually I got frustrated and asked directly what was really bothering her about the break room. I thought she was going to tell me that it was too cramped, or the lights randomly cut off and made her uneasy. These things bothered me too about it, but no. What she told me was that she heard things in the ceiling, like somebody was walking around in there. I had learned from my mother that there was a room in the ceiling, but it wasn't for walking around. It was for maintenance. Most of the stuff in there was wiring and insulation, but technically someone could go up there. So I told my girlfriend this and said it was likely an employee up there to fix stuff. She said that that was fine, but she didn't really like it, and still preferred walking around or sitting in the food court. I understood her discomfort and wanted to help, so I agreed. We had a really good relationship in the sense of communication, and though I got frustrated, I wanted to make sure that she felt comfortable. Later that day, I mentioned what my girlfriend had told me and asked what they were fixing in the ceiling. Though my mom just looked distressed and said that they hadn't been up there fixing anything that day, but she wanted me to see something. My mom took me into the receiving room of the department store, which was just a room off in the back filled with boxes and random junk the store was going to put out for sale. The layout of this room, though, was sort of an L shape. One part of the L was used for receiving, but the other part was the way into the ceiling. I should clarify for this next part that to get into the ceiling, the store would have to call for the mall's maintenance team. They didn't have a ladder or anything on hand to climb in there, as it would have been a safety hazard. The only thing that this particular area had was a hatch that led into the ceiling. That was it. So needless to say, I was horrified to see what appeared to be claw marks leading up the wall to the hatch. I still remember the way that they looked. Brown gashes that had been dug into the concrete wall of the receiving room. I asked my mom if it was a prank, but she told me that this wasn't the first time that it happened, and she had no way of knowing that I would even ask about it. According to her, these weird carvings had shown up several times over the course of a few months, Each time, the store would call in the mall security and maintenance teams who would clean the wall up and then go into the ceiling to investigate. Nothing had ever come of their searches though, and they would eventually give up dealing with the marks. The only explanation that mall security could give was that it was likely a homeless individual who had made their way into the ceiling by sheer willpower and happened to be very good at hiding during the searches. I stopped staying at the mall with my mom after that, and any time that I wanted my girlfriend to come over, we found somewhere else to go during the day. Sometimes she would just come over to my house and we would watch TV or whatever, but I didn't feel safe going back to the break room after that. I knew that nothing had happened up until that point, but I just didn't want to risk it honestly. So to whoever or whatever was walking around in the ceiling at my mom's workplace, I hope we never meet. I had a pretty creepy experience with my friends in the woods this past weekend. So for some context, me and my friends like to be in the foresty part of my stage and just hang out there. It's more peaceful to us and cooler looking. Anyway, when we got out there, we normally go down this one road that's pretty out of the way from everything. No houses on it and no streetlights, and it stretches for miles with thick woods on either side. This one night, it was just me and my one friend who has never been down this road before, so I decided to show it to him. We start driving down it, and I'm pretty far into it when I see a reflection of what looks like a license plate of a car. So I'm confused because cars are never on this road, especially not at this time of night. So I decide to go a little bit past it, and it turns out to be a practically brand new Mustang sitting on the side of the road. So I find it strange and I turn around and I go home. The following weekend comes around and me and my friends who frequent the road go down it, and the Mustang is there again, but this time, it's in a different spot with a white towel sticking out of the window. We find it odd and check it out to make sure that nobody needs help or anything, and the inside looks new as well. So we brush it off but keep it in the back of our minds. The next day we go back and it's again in a different spot, but still has the whole white towel sticking out of the window. So this time I take a picture of the plates and try to run them, but notice that it's parked in the only spot on the road where there's no service. Which is really weird, so we start driving back towards home to get a connection, and I run the plates but nothing comes up. So we decide to stake out the car and see if somebody comes to get it. So that night rolls around and we're sitting in my friend's car trying to look at this Mustang that's about 100 feet in front of us, when me and my friend decide to get out and go take a look with our flashlights. We walk up to the car. There was nothing weird so far and we heard nothing. Like there were no bugs or anything. We decide to walk into this little clearing in the woods and take a look around. As we're standing there screaming, "Hello," and "Hey, we like your Mustang," we start to hear whispers and see movement. And then all of a sudden, me and my friend think that we hear our friends talking. So we start to run back to our car, and we hear footsteps behind us following. We get back and they said that they hadn't been talking that loud, and from that far away we wouldn't have been able to hear anything that they were saying. My friend driving decides to drive up to the side of the Mustang to where his lights are shining on the driver's side door, and my one friend jokingly starts to video. Later on, we check back on the video and you can clearly see a person standing there in the woods. And there's another person that you can't clearly make out hiding behind a tree. When I get home, I'll try and post the video, but I know it sounds hard to believe, but really, this was all true. Luckily, we didn't venture that much further into the woods, and if our friends were talking or not, that weird occurrence saved us.